Captain Veltara's forehands trembled as another explosion rocked the bridge of the Harmony's light. The Zenthari commander had seen many dangerous situations in his 30 years exploring the galaxy, but nothing like this. Red warning lights bathed everything in an angry glow, while emergency alarms wailed like dying animals. "Hull breach on Deck 7, shouted his security chief, a massive Corvan whose stone-like skin was cracking from stress. The 8-feet-tall being's usual calm demeanor had vanished completely. Emergency bulkheads are holding, but barely. Veltara's elongated head turned toward the main view screen, where the Kepler Nebula swirled around them like a cosmic storm. What had started as a routine scientific mission to study the nebula's unique properties had turned into a nightmare. Beautiful streams of purple and gold gas danced outside their ship, but those same gases were slowly cooking their hull with deadly radiation. "How did this happen?" Veltar muttered, his tail lashing anxiously behind his command chair. The research vessel had been equipped with the latest Council technology, designed specifically for nebula exploration. Yet here they were, trapped and dying. His chief engineer Zixtel scuttled across the bridge on 6 crystal legs. The vortex translucent body normally glowed a peaceful blue, but now it pulsed angry orange like a warning beacon. "Captain, the quantum resonance from the nebula's core interfered with our drive matrix. It created a feedback loop that shattered the quantum containment field." "In simple terms, Zixtel," Veltar said, trying to keep his voice steady for the crew. "We're stuck, sir. The drive is completely dead. Worse, the explosion damaged our primary fusion reactor. We're running on backup power, and life support is failing. I estimate 18 hours before the air becomes unbreathable." The bridge fell silent except for the constant beeping of alarms. Veltar looked around at his diverse crew. There was Communications Officer Linda, a graceful Sylvani, whose butterfly-like wings drooped with despair. Navigation Officer Corvin, whose reptilian Soren features showed barely controlled panic. Even Dr. Yelenina, the calm healer whose plant-like Verdani nature usually kept everyone peaceful, was swaying with distress. 73 beings from 12 different species, all depending on him. All with families back home who would never see them again. Long-range communications. What's our situation?" Veltar asked, though he already knew the answer. Linda's antenna-like appendages quivered as she checked her instruments. The nearest Council patrol is the Peaceful Journey, 3 days away at maximum warp. The Scientific Endeavor is 4 days out. "Sir, even if we sent the distress call right now, she didn't need to finish. Everyone understood basic math. 18 hours of air versus 3 days of travel time. They were dead." Veltar's mind raced through every emergency protocol he'd ever learned. Emergency power to extend life support. Already activated. Evacuate to escape pods. Nebula's radiation would cook them in minutes. Put the crew in stasis pods. The pods needed main power, which they didn't have. "Sir," Linda spoke quietly, her voice barely audible above the alarms. "There is ... one possibility." Every head on the bridge turned toward her. The young communications officer looked terrified to even mention it. "What possibility?" Veltar demanded. "The restricted frequency, sir. The Deathworlder emergency channel." The bridge became so quiet you could hear the ship's hull creaking under radiation stress. Several crew members gasped. Others stepped backward as if Linda had suggested opening the airlocks. Veltar felt his blood turn cold. The Deathworlder emergency channel? Every ship in the galaxy carried the equipment to broadcast on that frequency. But the Galactic Council had made the rules crystal clear. Article 7 of the Emergency Protocols: the Deathworlder frequency shall only be activated in cases of immediate species extinction with no alternative solutions available. The humans of Sol System monitored that channel constantly. The humans, the galaxy's most feared predator species. The beings who came from a world so hostile that merely surviving there turned them into living weapons. Deathworlders who could kill with their bare hands, who thought nothing of charging into battle against impossible odds, who had conquered their entire star system through violence and cunning. "Captain?" whispered Dr. Yelenina, her leaf-like hair rustling with fear. "Surely there must be another way. The humans? They're not like us. They're warriors, killers. What if they see our distress as weakness and decide to take advantage? Veltar understood her fear. Every child in the galaxy grew up hearing stories about humanity. How they had nearly destroyed their own planet through warfare. How they built weapons that could crack moons. How their military ships were designed not just to defeat enemies, but to obliterate them completely. But as another explosion shook the ship and the lights flickered ominously, Veltar looked at his crew again. At young Linda, barely out of the academy. At old Corvin, who had grandchildren waiting for him on Soria Prime. At Dr. Yelenina, his healing touch had saved countless lives. "Open the channel," he said firmly. "Sir?" Linda S. wings fluttered. In shock, "You heard me. Open the Deathworlder emergency channel. Broadcast on all human frequencies." "Captain, are you certain?" Zixtal's crystalline body had turned deep red with alarm. "The Council specifically forbids the Council isn't." "Here." Veltar snapped, his patience finally breaking. "We are dying, Zixtal. 18 hours. We'll all be corpses floating in this nebula. Our families will never know what happened to us. Is your pride worth more than 73 lives?" Engineer's glow dimmed to a subdued orange. Around the bridge, the other officers slowly nodded. They were scientists and explorers, not politicians. When faced with death, survival instincts overrode decades of Council propaganda. "Linda frequency open, sir," Linda reported, her voice shaking. Veltar took a deep breath and activated the shipwide communication system. This message would go out not just to the bridge, but to every human listening post within 50 light years. "This is Captain Veltar of the Galactic Council research vessel Harmony's Light. Our quantum drive has failed in the Kepler Nebula. We have 73 souls aboard from 12 different species. Our life support will fail in 18 hours. We have no propulsion, no escape pods, no way to save ourselves." His voice cracked. "Slightly, we are researchers, not soldiers. We are scientists, not warriors. We are dying, and we have nowhere else to turn. Please, if there is any humanity left in humanity, help us." The message transmitted into the void, racing through subspace toward the Sol system. Toward Earth, toward the Deathworlders, who might save them, or might ignore them completely. The bridge fell silent as they waited. Outside, the beautiful, deadly nebula continued its ancient dance. Indifferent to the fate of 73 small lives lost in its embrace. Admiral Deho was studying the latest patrol reports in the command center of the Unbreakable when the emergency frequency crackled to life. His coffee mug paused halfway to his lips as Captain Veltar's desperate voice filled the bridge. Every conversation stopped. Every human officer turned toward the speakers with wide eyes. The 50-year-old Admiral had fought in 3 major conflicts and commanded the most powerful fleet in human history. But hearing the raw terror in an alien captain's voice still made his chest tighten. These weren't enemies begging for mercy. These were researchers, scientists, explorers, just like the humans who had first ventured beyond Earth's solar system decades ago. Admiral Lieutenant Haywan called from the communications station, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. Confirming the signal source. "It's definitely coming from the Kepler Nebula, approximately 47 light-years from our current position. The ship's transponder identifies it as the Harmony's Light, a Galactic Council research vessel." Deho set down his coffee and stood, his weathered hands clasping behind his back. Around the bridge, his crew waited for orders. These were veteran spacers who had seen combat against rogue AI fleets and space pirates. They had defended human colonies from asteroid bombardments and fought off alien raiders. But right now, they looked like children waiting for their father to tell them what to do. "Tactical, what's our response time to the Kepler Nebula?" Deho asked. Commander Sung Min, the ship's tactical officer, quickly ran calculations on his console. "At maximum jump speed, approximately 18 minutes for the entire fleet to reach their position, sir." 18 minutes, Deho repeated quietly. The distress call had said they had 18 hours of life support left. Plenty of time if they moved fast. But this wasn't a simple rescue mission. This was a political nightmare waiting to happen. "Sir." Captain Minho approached from his position at the executive officer's station. The younger man's face showed the same conflict Deho felt. The Galactic Council has made their position on human military movements very clear. We're supposed to stay within our designated patrol zones, taking a full battle fleet into Council. Space without authorization could be seen as an act of aggression, Deho finished. I know the regulations, Minho. The bridge fell silent again, except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Outside the massive viewports, stars wheeled slowly past as the Unbreakable maintained its patrol route along the outer rim of human space. Somewhere out there, 73 beings were dying while politicians played their games. Admiral, called Chief Petty Officer Biora from the sensor station. I'm detecting 11 other human vessels within jump range. The entire 7th Fleet is ready for immediate deployment. Deho walked to the center of the bridge, where a holographic display showed the tactical situation. 12 human warships, each one a kilometer long and bristling with enough firepower to level a continent. The Unbreakable alone carried fusion torpedoes that could crack a moon, railguns that could punch through solid rock, and defensive systems designed to withstand attacks from entire enemy fleets. The Galactic Council called humans Deathworlders. For good reason. Earth had been a harsh teacher, forcing humanity to become tough, resourceful, and dangerous. Every human ship was built like a fortress and armed like a dreadnought, because that's what it took to survive in the galaxy. But right now, all that firepower meant nothing compared to the rescue equipment in their cargo bays. Lieutenant Haywan, Deho said finally, patch me through to all ships in the fleet. Channel open, sir? Deho activated the fleet-wide communication system. His voice would now reach every human officer and crew member in the 7th Fleet. This is Admiral Deho to all ships. We've received a distress call from a Galactic Council research vessel trapped in the Kepler Nebula. 73 souls. Aboard life support failing. I know what you're all thinking. These are the same people who call us monsters. The same council that restricts our movements and treats us like barely contained savages. He paused, looking around at his bridge crew. They were good people, the best humanity had to offer. But right now, none of that matters. Somewhere in that nebula, people are dying. Scientists, researchers, maybe even families. They called us because they had no choice, and we're going to answer because that's who we are. We don't save people because they like us. We save them because it's right. Around the bridge, officers nodded. In the tactical display, Deho could see the other ships in the fleet adjusting their positions, preparing for emergency jump. All ships emergency jump to Kepler Nebula. Search and rescue formation. Prepare medical bays for alien casualties and get the engineering teams ready for emergency repairs. We're bringing them home, Admiral Minho said quietly. When the Council finds out we moved a full battle fleet without authorization, then they'll have to explain why they needed to call the Deathworlders to save their people. Deho replied with a grim smile. Navigation, plot our jump. All ships prepare for emergency burn. The bridge transformed into controlled chaos as the crew prepared for the fastest hyperspace jump in fleet history. Power levels spiked as the massive fusion reactors pushed beyond normal limits. The Unbreakable S hull groaned as jump engines charged to maximum capacity. Jump calculations complete, reported the navigation officer. All ships report ready. Execute jump. All ships, emergency burn to Kepler Nebula. Reality twisted around the 7th Fleet as 12 massive warships vanished in flashes of brilliant light. Space folded in on itself, carrying them across 47 light-years in the blink of an eye. The journey that would have taken months at normal speed was completed in minutes. When the Unbreakable materialized in normal space near the nebula, Deho immediately felt the danger. The cosmic storm was beautiful but deadly, with radiation levels that would cook an unshielded ship in hours. Somewhere in that swirling mass of gas and energy, the Harmony's light was fighting for survival. Sensors, locate the Council vessel. Deho ordered. Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, came the reply. Distance, approximately 50,000 kilometers inside the nebula's edge. Sir, they're not moving at all. Dead in space. On the main view screen, the Harmony's light appeared. as a tiny speck against the nebula's colorful backdrop. The research vessel was less than 1/10 the size of the Unbreakable, looking like a child's toy next to the human warships. "Admiral," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the Council vessel." "Put it through," Captain Veltar's voice came through the speakers, but now it carried a mixture of relief and terror. "Human vessels, this is Captain Veltar of the Harmony's Light. We didn't expect so many ships. We're not a military threat. We're just researchers." Deho could hear the fear in the alien captain's voice. From the Council ship's perspective, 12 human dreadnoughts had just appeared out of nowhere like avenging angels. Two beings who had been taught to fear humanity. It probably looked like an invasion force. "Captain Veltar, this is Admiral Deho of the Terran Defense Fleet. We're here to help. We're going to get you and your crew out of there safely." There was a long pause before Veltar responded. You came to help us." "That's what we do, Captain. That's what we do." As the human fleet moved into rescue formation around the dying alien ship, Deho couldn't help but smile. The galaxy might see them as monsters, but today they would learn what humans were really made of. Today, the Deathworlders were going to save the day, Commander. Soyoung sealed her helmet and checked her suit's life support systems one final time. Through the airlock window, she could see the Harmony's Light floating helplessly in the nebula's deadly embrace. The alien research vessel looked like it had been through a war zone, with hull plates buckled and entire sections dark from power. Failures. "Rescue Team Alpha, final equipment check," she announced through the comm system. Behind her, 12 human specialists prepared their gear. Each team member carried specialized tools designed for emergency repairs, medical equipment adapted for alien physiology, and portable life support systems. Ma'am called Sergeant Jamin, adjusting his heavy-duty cutting torch. "The alien ship's hull is radiating dangerous levels of plasma energy. Our suits can handle it for maybe 2 hours before the shielding fails," Soyoung replied. She had led rescue operations before, but never anything like this. Saving human colonists was one thing. Saving 73 beings from 12 different species, each with unique biological needs, was something else entirely. The airlock cycled open, and the rescue team launched themselves across the gap between ships. The nebula's radiation created spectacular light shows around them, but Soyoung knew that same beautiful energy would kill them all if they stayed exposed too long. They docked with the Harmony's Light through an emergency port near the ship's damaged engine section. The moment Soyoung stepped aboard the alien vessel, she realized how different everything was. The corridors were wider and taller than human ships, designed for species that came in all shapes and sizes. Some doorways were built for beings twice her height, while others seemed made for creatures that crawled rather than walked. Medical teams set up triage in their main cargo bay, she ordered. "Ao's engineering team, get to their power core and see what you can salvage. Everyone else, help with the evacuation. Remember, these beings have never seen humans up close. Try not to scare them more than they already are." The first group of survivors they encountered was a family of Zenthari researchers huddled near a damaged console. Captain Veltar stood with them, his forearms wrapped protectively around what appeared to be young ones. When he saw the humans approaching, his elongated face showed a mixture of relief and terror. "Captain Veltar?" Soyoung asked, removing her helmet to show her face. "I'm Commander Soyoung. We're here to get you out." At her with wide eyes. Soyoung realized this might be the first time he had ever seen a human face outside of Council propaganda videos. She probably looked like a monster to him, but she forced herself to smile gently. You came for us," Veltar whispered. "Of course we did. It's what neighbors do, right?" Behind Veltar, the Zenthari younglings peeked out curiously. They looked like smaller versions of their captain, with large eyes and delicate features. One of them, barely reaching Soyoung's knee, stepped forward and touched her armor with tiny hands. "Careful, little one," Soyoung said softly. "My suit is pretty heavy." Sergeant Jamin approached with a portable atmospheric scanner. "Commander, their air mix is different from ours. Higher nitrogen content, lower oxygen. The younglings especially will have trouble breathing on our ship." "Set up portable atmosphere generators in the refugee quarters," Soyoung ordered. and make sure the medical team knows about the respiratory differences. As they guided the first group toward the airlocks, So-young marveled at the diversity of species aboard the research vessel. There were the graceful Sylvani, with their butterfly wings, massive stone-like Corvin, who had to duck through human-sized doorways, and crystalline Vorthok, whose bodies pulsed with different colors depending on their emotions. In the ship's medical bay, they found several injured crew members. Dr. Kung Su, the Unbreakable-S chief medical officer, was already at work with his team. He knelt beside a wounded Vorthok engineer, whose translucent body was cracked like broken glass, leaking luminous fluid onto the deck. "I've never treated a silicon-based life form before," he admitted to Nurse Yunji. "Their entire physiology is based on crystalline matrices instead of carbon compounds. It's like trying to repair a living computer." "What do you need?" Yunji asked, scanning the alien's wounds with a medical tricorder. "A crystalline matrix stabilizer, but we don't carry equipment for non-human biology." Yunji thought for a moment, then brightened. "What about the nanofabricators in engineering? We can program them to create synthetic crystal compounds. Won't be perfect, but it might stabilize him long enough to get proper treatment." While the medical team worked their improvised miracle, the evacuation continued. Human Marines, who had trained their entire careers to fight alien invaders, now found themselves gently carrying injured researchers to safety. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Corporal Hanwoo encountered a group of terrified Zenthari children in one of the ship's darkened corridors. The little ones were crying, their soft voices echoing sadly in the damaged section. They pressed themselves against the walls when they saw him approaching in his combat armor. "Hey there," he said, removing his helmet and kneeling down to their level. "It's okay. Not going to hurt you." The children stared at him with wide, fearful eyes. Hyenwoo realized they had probably never seen a human before, and everything they knew about his species came from council propaganda about dangerous Deathworlders. Thinking quickly, he began to sing a gentle lullaby his grandmother had taught him years ago. It was an old Korean song about stars and moonlight, simple and soothing. His voice echoed softly in the corridor as he sang in his native language. Slowly, the Zenthari children began to relax. One brave little one approached and touched his hand with tiny fingers. Soon, they were all gathered around him, listening. To the strange but comforting sounds, Captain Veltar, who had been watching from nearby, felt tears in his 4 eyes. Here was a human soldier, armed and armored for war, singing lullabies to alien children. Everything the council had taught them about humanity was wrong. Meanwhile, Chief Engineer Park Ji-won and his team worked miracles in the ship's engine room. The quantum drive was completely destroyed, but they managed to restore basic power to life support systems throughout the vessel. They rerouted power conduits, bypassed damaged circuits, and even fabricated replacement components using portable 3D printers. "This alien technology is actually pretty elegant," Ji-won commented as he welded a new power coupling into place. "Different from our designs, but well-engineered. Their quantum matrix theory is years ahead of ours." As the hours passed, the rescue operation became a symphony of cooperation. Human engineers worked alongside alien scientists to stabilize the ship. Medical teams created treatments for species they had never encountered, living spaces for beings with completely different environmental needs. The most challenging moment came when they discovered a Verdani researcher named Dr. Yelenina, trapped under heavy debris. The plant-like being was seriously injured, her leaf-like appendages torn and bleeding green fluid. Verdani required very specific atmospheric conditions to survive, and her injuries were beyond anything in human medical databases. Dr. Kung Su knelt beside her, running his scanners over her unusual physiology. "I have no idea how to treat her," he admitted to So-young. "Her entire circulatory system is based on photosynthetic processes. She's literally powered by light." "Then give her light," So-young said simply. "Redirect some of the ship's illumination systems. Create an improvised greenhouse if you have to." Within an hour, the medical bay had been transformed. Portable growth lamps surrounded Dr. Yelenina's medical bed. Human medics carefully tended to her wounds, while monitoring her unique vital signs as the evacuation neared completion. Captain Veltar found himself standing on the bridge of the Unbreakable alongside Commander So-young. Through the massive viewports, he could see his crew being cared for by humans who had risked their lives to save beings they had never met. "Why?" he asked So-young. "Why risk everything for us? Your council calls us primitive. Our government treats your people like dangerous animals. Why help us?" So-young looked out at the nebula, where human ships were still working to salvage what they could from the Harmony's light. "Because when someone calls for help, you answer," she said simply. "That's what makes us human, not our weapons or our technology, but the fact that we can't walk away when someone needs us." In the distance, the last shuttle loaded with alien refugees docked safely with the human fleet. 73 beings who should have died in the cold vacuum of space were now safe, warm, and cared for by the very species they had been taught to fear. The rescue was complete. But the real story was just beginning. Captain Veltar had never been inside a human warship before, and everything about the Unbreakable amazed him. The corridors were built for efficiency rather than beauty, with exposed pipes and cables running along the walls. Warning signs in multiple languages covered every surface, and the air carried the scent of metal and ozone that spoke of raw power barely contained. But what struck him most was how the humans had transformed their war machine into a refugee center. Mess halls designed for soldiers now served meals adapted for alien digestive systems. Weapons storage bays had become temporary living quarters with privacy screens and comfortable bedding. The ship's recreation areas buzzed with quiet conversations. In dozens of languages, as his crew slowly recovered from their ordeal, "Your people are remarkable," Veltar said to Admiral Deho as they walked through the observation deck. The human admiral moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had commanded in battle, but his eyes showed genuine concern for the alien refugees under his care. Through the massive, reinforced windows, the Kepler Nebula continued its ancient dance of creation and destruction. Beautiful streams of gas glowed in impossible colors, while newborn stars flickered to life in stellar nurseries billions of years old. It was the kind of sight that made even seasoned space travelers stop and stare in wonder. "My chief engineer wants to write a research paper about your quantum drive technology," Deho said with a slight smile. He says, "Your people solve theoretical problems our scientists have been working on for decades." Veltar's tail twitched with nervousness. "Admiral, I must ask you something, and I hope you will answer honestly." "I'll try. Why did you really come for us? Your people have every reason to hate the Galactic Council. We've restricted your movements, limited your trade, painted you as dangerous expansionists in every news broadcast. Yet when we called for help, you dropped everything and risked 12 warships to save 73 beings you'd never met." Deho was quiet for a long moment, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. At 62 years old, he had seen humanity's first tentative steps into galactic society and watched as fear and misunderstanding built walls between species. "Captain, let me tell you a story," he said finally. 23 years ago, I was a young commander aboard the cruiser Defiant. We received a distress call from a mining colony in the Outer Rim. Pirates had attacked, killed the security forces, and were holding 3,000 colonists hostage. Veltar listened intently as Deho's voice took on the distant tone of someone reliving old memories. The colony was in council space, technically outside our jurisdiction. The nearest council fleet was 2 weeks away. The pirates were demanding ransom and threatening to start executing hostages if they didn't get it. We could have followed protocol, filed a report, waited for authorization. But you didn't. We couldn't. 3,000 people were going to die while bureaucrats debated jurisdiction. So we went in, took out the pirate ships, rescued the hostages, and captured the raiders. Saved every single colonist. Veltar's 4 eyes blinked in confusion. But I've never heard of this incident. The Council News Services never reported a human rescue mission. Deho's smile was sad and knowing. The official report listed it as a Council Security Forces operation. We never got credit, never asked for it. What mattered was that those people went home to their families. The alien captain felt a chill run down his spine. "You're saying this has happened before? Captain, this is what we do. It's who we are?" Deho activated a holographic display that showed a star map of the galaxy. Dozens of systems glowed with soft blue light. The Cerberus colony disaster. 15 years ago. Massive solar flares were cooking the planet, and the evacuation ships couldn't handle the radiation. We pulled 14,000 Rilithian refugees off that world with our heavy cruisers, or systems lit up on the map as... Deho continued. The Proxima Station plague outbreak. Bioweapon got loose in the station's life support systems. 2 million beings were dying while the council debated whether to risk sending medical aid. Human hospital ships arrived within 48 hours and worked for 6 months to contain the outbreak. Veltar stared at the map in growing amazement. There were dozens of incidents, maybe hundreds. Every glowing point represented lives saved by humans who were supposed to be the galaxy's greatest threat. The Andorian refugee crisis, when their homeworld's government collapsed. The vegan food shortage after the asteroid impact. The Altair system evacuation when their star went unstable. Deho's voice carried the weight of decades spent in service to beings who would never know his name. Every time, Captain. Every single time someone called for help, we answered. But the reports, the news broadcasts, ... Veltar's voice trailed off as understanding dawned, said what the council wanted them to say. We're not conquerors, Captain. We're not expansionists trying to build an empire. We're gardeners tending to this galaxy because someone has to. Through the viewport, Veltar could see human engineering teams still working in the nebula's deadly radiation. They wore heavy protective suits that could only operate safely for short periods, but they kept going back out to salvage components from the Harmony's light. Not for themselves, but because those components might be needed to save other ships. Someday, why keep it secret? Veltar asked. Why not tell the galaxy what you're really doing? Deho walked closer to the window, his reflection ghost-like in the reinforced glass. Because fear is easier than trust, Captain, the Council finds. It's convenient to have humanity as a threat to rally against. As long as they can point to the dangerous Deathworlders lurking at the edge of civilized space, they can justify their military budgets and their tight control over member species. And you let them, we endure it, because the alternative is war. And war means people die. Innocent people who never asked to be caught between politicians and their games. Deho turned back to face Veltar, his eyes reflecting decades of quiet sacrifice. So we stay in our designated patrol zones, follow their restrictions, and pretend we don't see the injustices. But when someone calls for help on the emergency frequency, all that political nonsense goes out the airlock. Veltar thought about his own crew, now safe and warm in human quarters designed for alien comfort. He thought about Dr. Yelenina, recovering under specially calibrated growth lamps that human engineers had built from scratch. He thought about Corporal Hyenwu, singing lullabies to Zenthari children who had never seen a human before. This is why you call yourselves gardeners. My grandmother used to say that a garden needs tending or the weeds take over and the good plants die. The galaxy is our garden, Captain. Every species, every planet, every life has value. We tend to them. Not because we expect thanks, but because it's right. A soft chime interrupted their conversation as Admiral Deho's communication officer appeared on the observation deck. Sir Lieutenant Hay-1 reported, we're receiving priority communications from Council headquarters. We're demanding an explanation for our unauthorized entry into their space. Deho sighed. Here we go. Tell them we'll file a full report when the rescue operation is complete. Veltar felt his blood turn cold. Admiral Yalthera was the Council's most hardline anti-human commander. If she was coming here personally, it meant the political situation had just become very dangerous. Sir Veltar said urgently, Admiral Yalthera doesn't just dislike humans. She fears them. She sees 12 human warships in Council space. She might interpret it as an invasion force. Deho nodded grimly. I know. The question is, what are you going to tell her when she arrives? Veltar looked out at the nebula one more time, watching human ships risking their crews to salvage components they would never use. He thought about everything Deho had shown him, all the secret acts of heroism that had gone unrecognized for decades. I'm going to tell her the truth, he said quietly. The galaxy needs to know what humanity really is, even if it costs you your career, your reputation. Veltar's forearms straightened with resolve. Admiral, for 20 years I've been a researcher, seeking truth wherever it leads. I've discovered the greatest truth of my career today. Humanity isn't the galaxy's greatest threat. You're its greatest hope. In the distance, sensors detected the approaching Council fleet, racing toward a confrontation that would change everything. But for now, in the quiet of the observation deck, two ship captains from different worlds understood each other perfectly. The truth was finally going to come to light. The grand assembly hall of the Galactic Council stretched impossibly high. Above Captain Veltar's head, its crystalline walls amplifying every whisper into echoing waves of sound. Representatives from over 300 species filled the tiered seats, their various forms creating a rainbow of alien life. Some floated in energy bubbles, others perched on specialized platforms, and a few existed as pure consciousness projected through holographic displays. At the center of it all sat the Judgment Circle, where Veltar now stood, alone under the harsh glare of recording lights. Every major news network in the galaxy was broadcasting this hearing live. Trillions of beings across thousands of worlds would hear whatever he said next. Council. Prime Yelthera dominated the scene from her elevated throne. The ancient ethereal's form shimmered like liquid starlight, her species having evolved beyond physical matter eons ago. She had been present at humanity's first contact with galactic civilization 50 years earlier, and her distrust of the violent primitives from Sol was legendary. Captain Veltar, her voice resonated through quantum harmonics that bypassed the ears and spoke directly to the mind. Stand before this assembly to give testimony regarding the unauthorized human military incursion into the Kepler sector. The record will show that 12 Terran warships violated our territorial sovereignty, potentially threatening the peace we have maintained for centuries. Around the chamber, alien delegates leaned forward in anticipation. This was the moment they had been waiting for since news of the incident broke. Finally, concrete evidence of human aggression. Finally, justification for the restrictions that kept Earth's Deathworlders contained at the galaxy's edge. The assembled representatives expect your full cooperation, Yelthera continued, her form pulsing with authority. You will confirm that the humans entered Council space without permission, displaying typical Deathworlder disregard for civilized protocols. This incident will demonstrate why further restrictions on human movement are necessary for galactic security. Veltar felt the weight of 300 species watching him. In the front row, he spotted Ambassador Crixtal of the Vorthok Republic, whose crystalline form glowed nervous yellow. Behind him sat Chancellor Morden of the Soren Federation, his reptilian features twisted in anticipation. These beings had built their political careers on the fear of human expansion. The recording devices hummed quietly, waiting to capture his words and broadcast them across the galaxy. In a few moments, trillions of beings would hear his testimony about humanity's aggression in the Kepler Nebula. Captain Yelthera's mental voice carried an edge of impatience. You will now state for the record that the human fleet violated Council territorial agreements. Veltar closed his 4 eyes and took a deep breath. In his mind, he saw Corporal Hyanwu kneeling in a darkened corridor, singing gentle lullabies to terrified Zenthari children. He remembered Dr. Kungsu, working frantically to save a dying Vorthok engineer, using improvised techniques to treat a species he'd never encountered. He thought of Admiral Deho's weathered face as he revealed decades of secret humanitarian missions. When Veltar opened his eyes, his voice was steady and clear. No, the single word hit the assembly like a physical blow. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers and confused chittering from hundreds of different species. Several delegates rose from their seats, their various forms expressing outrage in ways that transcended language barriers. Yelthera's ethereal form flared brighter, her ancient composure cracking for the first time in centuries. Captain Veltar, you will comply with the established narrative. The humans saved us, Veltar interrupted, his voice growing stronger. Not because they had to, not because they wanted territory or resources or political advantage. They saved us because 73 beings were going to die, and they couldn't live with that. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of recording equipment. Veltar stepped forward, directly addressing the cameras that would carry his words. To every corner of the galaxy, people of the galaxy. I am Captain Veltar, of the research vessel Harmony's Light. For 50 years, we have been told to fear the humans of Sol. We have been taught that they are violent conquerors, waiting to destroy our peaceful civilization. Today I stand before you to say that we were wrong. We were all wrong. Silence. Yelthara's mental scream echoed through the chamber, but Veltar continued. I have seen the true face of humanity, and it is not the face of war. When my ship was dying in the Kepler Nebula, when our life support was failing, and death was certain, we called for help on the Deathworlder frequency. We expected them to ignore us. We thought they might demand payment or political concessions. Instead, 12 of their most powerful warships appeared within minutes, not to conquer or threaten, but to save lives. He activated his personal transmitter, overriding the Council's broadcast controls. His words would now reach every inhabited world simultaneously. Humans call themselves gardeners, and now I understand why. They tend to this galaxy not for profit or glory, but because someone must. They answer every distress call, rescue every stranded ship, and heal every wound they can find. And they do it in secret, asking for no recognition, accepting no thanks. Ambassador Crystal's crystal form had shifted to deep blue with shock. Around the chamber, delegates were frantically consulting their personal databases, cross-referencing incidents that had been officially attributed to Council forces. The Cerberus colony evacuation, Veltar continued, where 14,000 Rilithians were saved from solar flares. The Proxima Station plague, where 2 million beings were cured while we debated sending aid. The Andorian refugee crisis, the vegan food shortage, the Altair evacuation. In every case, human ships arrived first, saved who they could, and left. Without claiming credit, Council Prime Yelthara's form was fluctuating wildly now, her ancient control slipping as decades of carefully constructed lies crumbled in real time. You don't understand? She projected desperately. The humans are dangerous. Their world created them to be killers. If we don't contain them, what? Veltar challenged. They might save more lives. They might prevent more disasters. They might continue being the galaxy's conscience while we debate and delay. The truth was spreading like wildfire across the galactic communication networks. On 1,000 worlds, beings were pulling up archived news reports and comparing them. 2 Veltar's revelations. The pattern was impossible to ignore once you knew what to look for. I have one more thing to show you, Veltar said, activating a holographic projector. The air above the assembly floor shimmered, revealing footage from the Harmony's Light. Security cameras. The images showed human soldiers gently carrying injured alien researchers. Dr. Kung Su, creating impossible medical treatments for species he'd never seen. Engineers working in deadly radiation to salvage components they would never use. Corporal Hyanwu singing to frighten children while his own life was at risk. This is what Deathworlders look like, Veltar said quietly. This is the face of humanity that we have hidden from ourselves. The chamber was completely silent now. 300 species watched the footage with growing understanding. These weren't the monsters of Council propaganda. These were protectors, guardians, heroes, who risked everything for strangers. The vote before this assembly today is not about human aggression, Veltar concluded. It is about whether we will continue living in fear of our greatest allies, or whether we will finally admit that we need them. The galaxy is vast and dangerous, filled with natural disasters, rogue AI fleets, space pirates, and 1,000 other threats. We have been facing these dangers alone, handicapped by our own prejudice, when we could have been facing them together. He looked directly at Council Prime Yelthara's wavering form. The choice is ours. We can continue building walls between species, or we can finally become the united galaxy we claim to be. 3 months later, the first joint human council fleet, launched from Earth's orbital shipyards. The massive formation included vessels from dozens of species, each contributing their unique technologies and capabilities to the common cause. Admiral Dejos stood on the bridge of the Unbreakable alongside Captain Veltar, now serving as the fleet's alien liaison officer. Around them, human officers worked beside Vorthok engineers, Sylvani navigators, and Soren tactical specialists. "Incoming distress call," reported Lieutenant Haywan from the communications station. "Colony ship New Horizon reports critical system failures in the Perseus arm. 300,000 colonists aboard. All ships," Dejo announced across the fleet channel. "Emergency jump to Perseus coordinates. Yes, let's bring them home." As the combined fleet vanished into hyperspace, racing toward another rescue mission, Veltar smiled. Through the viewports, he could see human destroyers flying in formation with Zenthari science vessels, their crews working together as naturally, as if they had been allies for centuries. The galaxy had finally learned its greatest lesson, that strength came not from fearing your neighbors, but from standing with them. And at the center of it all, the species once called Deathworlders had become what they were always meant to be: the Guardians, who answered when others called for help. In the depths of space, another ship was in trouble. But this time, it wouldn't face the darkness alone. This time, the cavalry was coming from 100 different worlds, united in their commitment to protect the innocent. The age of fear was over. Age of cooperation had begun. The end.